to threaten countries who oppose his strange talk on Greenland is also absurd. And I think a lot of the stuff about invading Greenland, he says, I believe it's really being done for negotiating effect, but he says it almost every day. So I feel like people like me and others, we got to speak up and say it's wrong. You don't threaten a NATO ally.
Donald Trump just sent the most unhinged letter in presidential history. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because what Trump wrote and sent to European leaders overnight is so deranged, so disconnected from reality, so dangerous, that members of his own party are now openly threatening to impeach him if he follows through on what he's proposing. And if you want coverage that actually explains how insane this situation is, instead of media outlets pretending this is normal presidential behavior, please subscribe National Brief Network, because we're breaking down the complete meltdown happening in Washington. Here's what happened. Trump sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Norway. And in that letter, Trump basically said that because Norway didn't give him the Nobel Peace Prize, he's no longer going to prioritize peace in his foreign policy. Let me say that again so it fully sinks in. The President of the United States just told a foreign leader that because he didn't win an award, he's abandoning peace as a guiding principle for American foreign policy. The actual letter is even more deranged than that summary makes it sound. Trump wrote, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8+ wars, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." He then goes on to threaten that he's going to take Greenland from Denmark because Denmark can't protect it from Russia and China. And he claims the world isn't secure unless America has complete and total control of Greenland. This is the President of the United States, writing official correspondence to allied nations. And it reads like a toddler's tantrum because he didn't get a toy he wanted. Except the toy is a peace prize, and the tantrum involves threatening war with NATO allies. Let me break down everything that's wrong with this letter, because there are so many layers of insanity packed into a few paragraphs. First, Trump claims he stopped 8+ wars. What 8 wars did Trump stop? I'll wait, because I can't think of a single war Trump actually ended. He didn't end the war in Afghanistan. Biden did that. He didn't end conflicts in Syria or Iraq or Yemen. Those are all still ongoing or were ended by other people. Trump is just making up accomplishments that don't exist to justify why he deserves a peace prize. Second, Trump seems to genuinely believe that Norway's government decides who gets the Nobel Peace Prize. That's not how it works. The Nobel Committee is an independent organization located in Oslo, but the Norwegian government has zero control over who wins. The Prime Minister of Norway can't just hand out Nobel Prizes to world leaders he likes. That's not a thing. But Trump either doesn't understand this basic fact or doesn't care because it ruins his victim narrative. So Trump is threatening peace itself because an independent committee that Norway doesn't control didn't give him an award for accomplishments he didn't achieve. That's the foundation of his entire argument. It's completely detached from reality. Third, Trump's justification for taking Greenland is that Denmark can't protect it from Russia and China. But Greenland is already protected. It's part of NATO. The United States has military bases there. We have a defense agreement with Denmark that's been in place for decades. The idea that Greenland is somehow vulnerable and needs America to invade and annex it is complete nonsense. And Trump's argument about why Denmark doesn't have a legitimate claim to Greenland is particularly rich. He says, why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago. Which is hilarious coming from an American president. Because that's literally how America claims ownership of most of its territory. Boats landed here hundreds of years ago. Europeans claimed the land. We built a country on that claim. So Trump is simultaneously arguing that historical presence doesn't establish legitimate ownership while leading a country whose entire territorial claim is based on historical presence. The hypocrisy is staggering. But more importantly, it shows Trump doesn't actually care about legal principles or international law. He just wants what he wants, and he'll make up whatever justification sounds good in the moment. Fourth, Trump claims he's done more for NATO than anyone since its founding. This is a lie. Trump spent his entire first term attacking NATO, questioning whether America should defend NATO allies, demanding that other countries pay more, creating chaos and uncertainty about America's commitment to the alliance. And now he's claiming he deserves credit for strengthening NATO, so therefore NATO should let him invade one of its member states? The logic doesn't even hold together. The letter concludes with Trump demanding that NATO do something for the United States by letting him take Greenland, because apparently Trump views alliances as transactional arrangements where America does things and expects payment in the form of territorial concessions. That's not how alliances work. That's not how international relations work. That's not how any of this works. But here's what makes this situation go from merely insane to genuinely dangerous. Republicans are starting to publicly break with Trump over this Greenland obsession. And they're not just expressing concerns or asking questions. They're threatening impeachment if Trump actually follows through with military action. Congressman Don Bacon went on television and said explicitly that if Trump invades Greenland, it would probably be the end of his presidency, that most Republicans know it would be immoral and wrong, that they would stand up against it. And when asked directly what would happen if Trump used military force, Bacon said it would lead to impeachment, that invading an ally is a high crime and misdemeanor, that it would violate America's NATO treaty obligations. Think about what that means. A Republican congressman is preemptively threatening to impeach a Republican president over a policy Trump is actively pursuing. That's not normal political disagreement. That's a fundamental break over whether the president has completely lost his mind. And Bacon isn't alone. Senator Thom Tillis gave an absolutely blistering statement calling the Greenland rhetoric absurd and insane. He said, "What makes me cranky is stupid. What makes me cranky is when people don't do their homework." He called out Trump's advisors for making amateur hour comments about American rights to Danish territory. And he made clear that Congress is a co-equal branch of government, and Trump doesn't speak for the entire U.S. government when he makes these territorial demands. Tillis specifically said that if annexing Greenland were to happen, it would require a vote on the floor of Congress, that Trump can't just unilaterally seize territory from allied nations, that there are constitutional processes that would need to be followed. And the implication was crystal clear. Congress isn't going to authorize this insanity. So you've got Republicans openly defying Trump, calling his plans immoral, threatening impeachment, warning that this would end his presidency. These aren't Democrats or never-Trumpers. These are members of Trump's own party who apparently have decided that threatening war with NATO allies over a temper tantrum about a peace prize crosses a line they won't accept. The international response to all of this is equally serious. European leaders are preparing massive retaliation if Trump follows through on his threats to impose tariffs or take military action. The European Union is looking at tariffing over $100 billion worth of American goods. The head of the IMF warned that a trade war between the US and Europe would trigger an escalation spiral that damages the global economy and causes financial market sell-offs. Economists are pointing out the obvious. There are no winners in a trade war. Households on both sides of the Atlantic would suffer. The global economy would take a hit, all because Trump is having a meltdown about not winning a peace prize and has decided Greenland is somehow the solution to his wounded ego. Denmark is a NATO ally. They've fought alongside American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've had military bases on Greenland since World War II. The relationship between the US and Denmark has been strong for decades. And Trump is willing to throw all of that away because an independent Norwegian committee didn't give him an award. The strategic stupidity of this is almost as stunning as the moral bankruptcy. Even if you believed America needed control of Greenland for national security reasons, which is debatable at best, threatening to invade an ally is the worst possible way to achieve that objective. It alienates every other NATO member. It undermines American credibility globally. It gives Russia and China exactly what they want, which is division and chaos within the Western alliance. And for what? So Trump can feel like he accomplished something? So he can plant a flag and claim he expanded American territory? The costs vastly outweigh any potential benefit. But Trump doesn't think strategically. He thinks in terms of personal grievances and ego satisfaction. And right now his ego is hurt because he didn't win a peace prize he thinks he deserves. What makes this even more absurd is that Trump is simultaneously inviting Vladimir Putin to join some peace board he's setting up for Gaza. So let me get this straight. Trump is threatening war with NATO allies over Greenland while inviting Russia's authoritarian leader, who's actively conducting a war of aggression in Ukraine, to participate in peace initiatives. The contradiction is so blatant, it's almost impressive. Putin has shown zero interest in peace in Ukraine. Russia is still bombing civilians, still occupying Ukrainian territory, still rejecting any peace proposal that doesn't involve Ukraine surrendering significant portions of its country. And Trump thinks this is the guy who should help broker peace in the Middle East, while simultaneously threatening war in Europe over territorial expansion? The message this sends to the world is catastrophic. America under Trump is unpredictable, unreliable, and willing to betray allies while embracing adversaries. That's not a foreign policy. That's chaos masquerading as leadership. And Republicans are finally starting to realize how dangerous this is. Not all of them. Plenty of Trump's enablers are still defending him or staying silent. But enough Republicans are speaking out that it's clear there's genuine alarm within the party about where Trump is heading. The threats of impeachment are particularly significant because they show Republicans are drawing red lines. They're saying there are things Trump could do that would force them to act, even if it means breaking with their own party's president. Invading a NATO ally apparently crosses that line, which is good. But it also raises the question of why this is the line when Trump has committed so many other impeachable offenses that Republicans ignored. Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election. He incited an attack on the Capitol. He stole classified documents. He's currently threatening the Federal Reserve and conducting unauthorized military operations. But invading Greenland is what finally gets Republicans to threaten impeachment? The priorities seem a bit skewed, but I guess we should take whatever accountability we can get. If the threat of impeachment prevents Trump from starting a war with Denmark, that's better than nothing, even if it reveals how broken the Republican Party's moral compass has become, that this is what it takes to get them to draw a line. The timing of all this is particularly bad for Trump because he's heading to Europe for an economic summit in Davos. He's going to be surrounded by the same European leaders he's been threatening and insulting. He's going to have to try conducting diplomacy while everyone knows he just sent unhinged letters about abandoning peace and seizing territory. How is that supposed to work? Is Trump going to shake hands with the Danish Prime Minister while actively threatening to invade Danish territory? Is he going to negotiate trade deals with European leaders while simultaneously threatening massive tariffs? The whole thing is a diplomatic nightmare. And meanwhile, back in Washington, Jack Smith is scheduled to testify before Congress. So Trump is going to be dealing with the special prosecutor who investigated him, laying out evidence of his crimes at the same time he's creating new international crises and facing impeachment threats from his own party. The level of chaos is unprecedented, and it's all self-inflicted. Every bit of this disaster stems from Trump's inability to handle not getting something he wants. He wanted a Nobel Peace Prize. An independent committee didn't give it to him, and his response is to threaten war and territorial expansion and abandonment of America's founding principles about peaceful international relations. This is what happens when you elect someone fundamentally unfit for office. Someone who views everything through the lens of personal grievance. Someone who can't separate their ego from their official duties. Someone who would literally risk war rather than accept that he didn't win an award. Republicans who are now threatening impeachment enabled all of this. They had chances to hold Trump accountable. They could have convicted him during his first impeachment, his second impeachment. They could have supported prosecutions. They could have refused to nominate him again. But they chose party loyalty over country. And now they're dealing with the consequences of that choice. The question is whether they'll actually follow through. If Trump does order military action against Greenland, will these Republicans actually vote to impeach? Or will they find some excuse to back down? Will they decide that party unity is more important than preventing war with an ally? We're about to find out whether Republican red lines mean anything, or if they're just performative statements designed to look principled while ultimately doing nothing. Because Trump has a way of pushing boundaries until people stop him. And if Republicans won't actually impeach him for invading an ally, then their threats are meaningless and Trump knows it. Make sure you're subscribed because this situation is developing rapidly. Trump is in Europe, Jack Smith is testifying, Republicans are making threats, and we're covering every development as it happens. Drop your thoughts in the comments about whether you think Republicans will actually impeach if Trump invades Greenland or if this is just more empty posturing.